Welcome to Resilient. I'm Lori Lorenzo, Deloitte's Research and Insights Director for our Chief Legal Officer program and host of the Resilient Chief Legal Officer track. How do you inspire your team to overcome setbacks? In this episode, Kermitt Brooks, Chief Legal Officer at the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, shares the leadership advice he's collected from childhood experiences to executive positions, which have shaped his career in the regulatory and life insurance industries. Kermitt also discusses his intentional path to becoming a chief legal officer and how aspiring legal executives can evaluate a company for cultural and ethical fit. Let's hear what Kermitt has to say. Kermitt, I am really excited to have you on the podcast. I'm very grateful that you decided to spend some time and energy with me and my team today. So thanks so much for being here.
I'm very happy to be here, Lori.
Well, Kermitt, I like to start these podcasts at the beginning. So thinking about who you were as a kid and what some of your early influences were, what caused you to be interested in the practice of law?
Oh, my goodness. I think I was always a debater as a kid growing up. I know my parents would say that. I would always debate with my teachers and my siblings and friends. But I don't think I decided to really pursue law as a career until probably the middle of college. I always thought I was going to be a journalist, very active in my high school newspaper. And in fact, in high school, I worked at the local newspaper in Flint, Michigan, where I grew up. And so if you were to ask me at 17, 18, or 19 what I was going to be when I grew up, I would have said I was going to be a broadcast journalist. I think what happened over the course of my time in college, I really got interested in public policy. That was my major in public policy, even though from a career perspective, I thought I would be a journalist. I thought it'd be helpful just to be steeped in policy sciences. And I realized that I found it more exciting making the news than reporting the news. And so I trended away from journalism and started really developing an interest in law. And also I was in a program where everyone was going to law school. And so I would like to say that I had greater wisdom than any other 20-year-old, but I didn't. I was around other classmates who were interested in going to law school, which got me interested in going to law school. Once I got there, though, I really enjoy studying it, and I really enjoy being a business lawyer and helping my business partners solve business problems. So that's kind of what got me there.
I got it. Well, I want to just rewind to that period of time where you were focused on journalism and then transitioned into this idea that law school might be the path for you. You said you liked the role of making the policy as opposed to reporting on the policy. So were you very opinionated, or was it a sense of frustration in the reporting that you were just kind of repeating what was happening but not influencing? Tell me a little bit more about that dynamic of the making versus reporting.
I think it was a sense of impact. I wanted to have a career where when I made decisions, it would be consequential. And I felt that, at least at the time, that I think it's different now with journalism, but I think at the time, just passively reporting about events of the day didn't ultimately make me feel like I would be satisfied professionally. And so whatever I did, I wanted to make an impact. And I thought that being a lawyer would give me that opportunity.
Gotcha. Did you have anyone in your young adult life that was a mentor or helping you navigate the choices?
Well, my parents were excellent. I come from a family where there weren't any lawyers ahead of me. I have a couple of lawyers who are cousins who we're all the same generation. But I think that influencing my choices was more not necessarily being a lawyer, but being very thoughtful and serious in my approach to choosing a career, to being really focused on doing your best and being your best, showing up fully. And I would have to say that my parents were my biggest influences there. Definitely, when I look at the dedication to hard work and delayed gratification and setting goals and pursuing them, I think about my dad.
Yeah, so your dad was, it sounds like someone that was teaching you to work hard and kind of take the long road to success. Yeah.
Yes.
So how does that influence the way you lead your teams today?
I think that the most important way to lead is to be able to. You've heard this kind of player coach model, and I think that there's something to that. That you have to really establish with the team your willingness to roll up your sleeves, dig in, and help solve problems and take your share of the load and help get whatever the project is across the finish line. And my role now as chief legal officer, it's a little different than it was when I was a more junior manager earlier in my career. Now I have to make myself available and make sure I'm available for guidance and to provide resources and to provide the vision. And sometimes that occurs on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning. And so I think that by making myself available for the folks that I work with is something that I definitely learned from my dad. I unfortunately lost my father when I was, I guess, about 31 or 32, and he was a manager at a auto plant in Flint, Michigan. And what I was impressed by at his funeral was how many people who worked for him came to his funeral and told us all these stories about our dad. And the stories they told were very similar to the stories we experienced. And so it made me realize that he really was truly authentic at work. So it wasn't like this different Charles Brooks that I knew. And so I think that that's something too. I try to be completely authentic at work, that the Kermitt Brooks who shows up at work as a leader is the same Kermitt Brooks that my family sees. Because I think that's the best way to be an effective leader is to be authentic.
Well, first of all, what a beautiful legacy that your father left of this authentic leadership and the way he impacted so many people. Thank you for sharing that. But also, what a wonderful lifelong lesson for you, because I think we hear this advice often, or at least I do. It's good to be an authentic leader, be yourself, bring your whole self to work. It's not always easy to actually do that though, because I think you can feel some insecurity. What if they don't like me? What if I'm not the kind of leader I need to be in this space? So have you ever encountered some of those, I don't know, self-doubt or concern about being authentic in the place that you are?
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make it very clear that my journey is just that, a journey. I'm not at the end of it. And so the things that I talk about and aspire to as a leader, I by no means have arrived. I think that on a good day, I'm hitting at 65 to 72%, but nowhere near 100%. But earlier in my career, I realized that my first job as a manager, I was one of the most junior attorneys, and I was managing attorneys who were much older than I was. And, I had just more years of practice. And what I learned quickly was that back to this authenticity, I couldn't be effective if I tried to lead as if I had the same years of practice experience as they had. And I could not lead if I felt as if there was nothing that I could learn from them, which was completely untrue. There was plenty I could learn from them. But what I also realized that there were aspects of my career experience and my outlook as a lawyer that could add value to our overall effort and provide guidance to everyone. So being a leader doesn't mean you have all the answers. Being a leader means that you have to acknowledge when you don't, learn from the colleagues that you're working with, and share your point of view in order to advance whatever objective that you're working on collectively as a team. I think that's what I learned early in my career, is that vulnerability of, hey, I don't know this. Can you help me out? And in the process of doing that, the colleagues that you're working with will come to you for guidance. So it becomes this dynamic of support that you're trying to foster. And so I think that early in my career as a younger manager, I learned that I didn't have to have all the answers. That a lot of times what your colleagues are looking for in a leader is support and guidance and the ability to be able to marshal resources when they need it. And that means a lot to them.
Yeah, I mean, people want to feel seen and valued, right? Whether they're the leader or on the team or anywhere in an organization. And I think what you just described is this curiosity about people and an openness to learning and helping, which sounds like has worked pretty well. I want to just back up a little and so we can specifically talk about your career journey because today you're the CLO at Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, but you had a couple stops along the way, right? Law firm life, a couple different in-house roles, and a significant period of time with the New York State Attorney General. So tell me about that career arc and some of the times that have stood out to you as like defining moments of your career.
Yeah, thanks for asking that because it gives me opportunity to go back down memory lane. I just mentioned my first management job, and that actually was at the AG's office. After graduating from law school, I came to New York City, and I worked at the Midtown law firm as an associate, as a commercial litigator, and it was a very enriching experience. I always say I was well trained by harsh critics. And which makes you a good lawyer. I realized I was there for quite a while, and I realized that I wasn't fully engaged and happy at a law firm. The narrative space you have as an outside counsel at a law firm was just too narrow for me, but I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. But what I did most immediately after leaving the law firm was to go to an in-house job. So I went to an in-house job at a life insurance company. But before leaving the law firm, there was a woman who had just become partner who had worked at New York State, and she had a fairly significant job at New York State. So I met this woman, former counsel to the first Governor Cuomo, and I was just impressed by her background, and I was looking for guidance on how I could really have a career to look more like hers. And so I remember walking into her office and asking her for advice and guidance. It's like, sort of like, I want you to mentor me. And she did. And thanks to her guidance, I was able to secure a job at the New York State Attorney General's office. And that kind of got the ball rolling for me. I was only at the life insurance company maybe 8 or 9 months or so. And then I got that first job as manager of the claims bureau. And I was, I guess about 10 years out of law school, 11 years out of law school at that point. And from there, I really started to come to the realization that I really liked the intersection between being a people leader and a lawyer. And so that got me started in the management role. And then I've been in various types of management roles for the last 20 plus years.
Well, that's an interesting observation because not everybody enjoys the transition from what I'll call tactician. So the kind of the thing you went to law school for, the actual practice of law, transitioning into the managing of people who are practicing law. But you actually really like that. And did you find that when you got to the AG's office that this notion that you were making policy or kind of more in the game was starting to be real for you, like the motivating?
Yeah, and also too with this whole intersectionality between people leader and lawyer, it's sort of the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. My father was a people leader. He had to, tend to the colleagues who worked in the auto plant every single day to make sure that they had what they needed in order to accomplish their objectives on the line. And so going back to looking at how my father managed people and how he approached management, I think is something that I carry around with me every day. But being at the AG's office, another thing that I found exciting, unlike a law firm, was at a law firm, everyone's a lawyer. Pretty much every kind of professional field that's represented is some practice group or some subject matter expertise in the law. The beauty of being at the AG's office and now at a large complex organization like Guardian, I'm around a range of professionals, and we're all in service to a greater organizational goal. It's not just lawyers. And so that's what I found exciting about being at the AG's office. I'd be in a meeting with a PhD in economics working on matters. And so I found that very exciting to be with professionals that were from other disciplines.
And eventually transitioned to, was it the Department of Financial Services? That's a separate entity from the AG, right?
Yeah, it was the insurance department at the time. And so what happened was after 2 years of being chief of the claims bureau at the AG's office, I had an opportunity when I came to work with Elliot Spitzer was the Attorney General at the time. When I came there to work at the Claims Bureau, it was with the understanding I'd be there for a couple of years, and then I'd go back to either an in-house job or back to some job in the private sector. And after 2 years, I had an opportunity to return to the private sector, but instead of going, Elliot gave me the opportunity to step out of a practice role, practicing on the day-to-day as a lawyer, to an operational role. So it was very exciting and challenging and a little scary and overwhelming to think that I would step out of a legal role and go into a pure operational role. But at that time in my career journey, I liked the operational and management stuff as I did the legal stuff. And so I took it. And for the remaining 6 years when I was at the AG's office, I was there a total of 8. I was in this role as Elliot's deputy for operations. And we had, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand employees across 33 offices in the state of New York, and handling all of the administrative and operational aspects of running such a large, complex organization was enriching. I mean, the issues that I encountered and the problems that I had to resolve inform me to this day. And so I did that for about 6 years. And once Elliot was elected governor, I was appointed as the first deputy superintendent of then the insurance department, which was the second in command role at the insurance department.
And was insurance a place where you had a particular interest, or this was a role that you were identified for because you had some aptitude or connection to that area?
I had done some insurance work toward the end of my time at the AG's office. I had done a few insurance-related investigations. But I think after 6 years of being in a non-legal role, I really was excited to now revert back to being, a policymaker, at least being steeped in one of the regulatory agencies. When looking at the state level regulatory agencies, I was immediately drawn to insurance because New York has such a large insurance market. And so I was very excited about getting the opportunity to be the first deputy at the insurance department. And once I got there, that's when I fell in love with insurance, and I fell in love with life insurance in particular. I remember when I got there, it was like about a month in, and I'm dealing with all of the policy issues and being updated, and I realized, wow, if I were exposed to this area of the law right out of law school, I would have been doing this right out of law school. So I felt very fortunate to, for the first time really in my career, to be so excited about all of the policy and legal issues that I was dealing with as a regulator, particularly when it related to life insurance companies.
Well, first of all, I have so many questions about life insurance, but that's probably a conversation for another day and a cup of coffee. But second of all, this is so interesting to me because when I started law school, I really only knew about litigators. I knew lawyers went to court. And over all of the years of law school and all the years since then, every day I'm amazed at the things that lawyers do in this world. So I'm not surprised to hear you say, I didn't know this was a thing until I was in it. And so just if we have young listeners or listeners that are early in their legal career or thinking about law school, I just really encourage you to explore the wide and diverse array of careers that lawyers do, because it is surprising at all the different ways that lawyers are involved in not just law, but in business and innovation and insurance and everything else. So fantastic.
Yeah, and one of the things too, Lori, that I would recommend to anyone who's considering going to law school, who's otherwise early in career, is to have non-legal professional experiences before starting to practice law or before going to law school, because I think it informs you. If I were to look back, I think one of the misses for me was going directly from undergrad to law school and not having work experience in between. Because if I had that work experience, I would have developed a better understanding of what really excited me as a professional and as a lawyer. So I graduated from law school and I became a commercial litigator because LA law was ahead at the time. And I just thought that that's what you were supposed to do, is be a litigator. And then I came to realize after doing it for some time that while it's okay, it's not something that excites me as much as what I'm doing now. And I think by having had professional experience before going to law school, I would have had a broader understanding of exactly what lawyers do.
Yeah, this is advice I've heard from a couple different CLOs. That and explore the world and cultures, right? Get to know yourself and the diversity of the world so that you can think about where you want to have a particular impact.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're at the point of your career where you are the deputy superintendent of the Department of Insurance. And from there, you make a decision to go back into an in house role. So tell me about that. How did you know it was the right time or the right opportunity?
Well, by the time I left state service, I was in state service for 11 years, and I had a variety of roles, starting off as, bureau chief of the Claims Bureau. I was first, then ending up as first deputy super at the insurance department, briefly acting super. And I felt like when I looked at all of the accomplishments, all the objectives I had in state service, that I pretty much accomplished them. And also, too, I think the greatest gift I got from public service was my love of life insurance. And what I wanted to do was to be a business lawyer for a life insurance company. And so I set about trying to pursue those opportunities so I could continue to learn more about the business. I felt as the insights that I developed, not only being a regulator at the insurance department, but also during the time of the financial services crisis, that I had insights that could add value as in-house counsel. And so after being at the department for, 3+ years, moved to an in-house counsel role.
And was your thought at that time that you aspired to be a chief legal officer, or was that just the path you took? Were you intentional about developing experiences from there? Will you tell us a little bit about how you got there to where you are now?
Yeah, to be fair, I was very intentional. I know there's plenty of CLOs who will say that, look, I focus on my subject matter expertise and I was working real hard and someone tapped me on the shoulder and before I knew it, I was CLO. That wasn't my journey. My journey was I was very intentional about making sure that I developed the skills and pursued the opportunities that would enrich my experience so that I could become a credible candidate for a CLO role at a company. And that's one reason why I took the job in operations, because I felt like that was an experience that a lot of lawyers don't have an opportunity to have. And to be able to step out of a legal role and to deal with the day-to-day operational issues of a complex organization like the AG's office would serve me well as a chief legal officer one day. So I remember once I was leaving the insurance department, I met with the deputy of a life insurance company. And I remember sitting down with him and I says, look, I aspire to be a deputy GC or GC at a life insurance company one day. How do I go about doing that? And he gave me some great advice. He said, learn the business, learn how your business clients execute on business strategy, the impediments they have, and how they overcome them. Learn the business and get a job that will allow you to learn the business. I did that, and there's certain practice groups that really lend itself to knowing the business, and one of them is, and there are different names for the practice groups of the different insurance companies, but basically, I had the opportunity to go to AXA Equitable as the chief product lawyer there, and it's an insurance practice group. And so by working with clients and developing products, I learned a lot about the business, because the practice group that I was responsible for enabling the product initiatives, the services, and all the offerings that the company provided to its consumers. And it taught me an immense amount about not only the products that we manufactured, but also how we administered the products that we had already sold. And so that's how I got that experience. As a regulator, I had a working understanding of, life insurance companies and how they manage liability and investments and balance sheet issues, but I didn't have a full understanding about how the companies manufacture products and went to market to sell those products and offer those services. And so being in the role of head of the insurance practice group at the first life insurance company that I worked at gave me that opportunity to learn that.
So I'm going to just take a little break here because I know that you love life insurance and you are clearly really excited about it, but I want to make sure that our listeners understand a little bit about this industry. I'm not sure how common the love of life insurance is. And so if someone's listening and they don't have the same passion for life insurance, can we give them a little bit of a primer of, what is this industry like? Does it change frequently? Has it experienced disruption in the way maybe like telecom has? Can you just give us a high level understanding of what this industry is like?
I think that there's two big components of the life insurance industry, and perhaps there are more components, but there's two components that come to mind for me. And there's financial protection in the products and services that the industry provides to American families to offer a safety net in a time of need, especially if there's an untimely death. Those are the life insurance products that are sold either through group or individually. And then there's retirement savings, and that is helping Americans accumulate the wealth that they need to be able to retire with dignity and to be able to pass on a legacy to their loved ones. So those are the two buckets I think of when I think of life insurance. And so when you look at the challenges that the life insurance industry faces, is very similar to the challenges that American families are facing. The good news is on the financial protection side, we have Americans living longer and great longevity. But on the other side, I think that there's a savings gap for retirement savings. And so we have, as an industry, plenty of opportunities to help Americans accomplish those objectives. I think that, like I said, all of the kind of macro issues we see in society, be it interest rates being too low, interest rates being too high, inflation now is something that we're dealing with, all the things that the life insurance industry deals with day to day. We sell promises. We make a promise to our policyholders as an industry that we're going to be there, be it in a time of need, at the same time of sorrow, or at the time of retirement. And so in order to manage those long-term objectives requires a really complex management of a lot of competing issues. So I think that's how I would describe the industry. It's very dynamic. It offers a level of complexity that I think from the outside looking in may not be readily apparent, but it really is there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love how you phrased it. We sell promises. So the idea of being trustworthy and ethical in the way the company operates its business has to be a high priority. I hope it's a high priority for every company, but particularly in this industry. And so, do you, as the CLO, feel like you get to lead on that account and set the tone for that through the company?
Yeah, I do. But, that's the thing, though. I think I speak for Guardian and every life insurance company. I think that this is a feature of the industry where there's this noble purpose to help Americans. And so I think what drew me to the life insurance industry and then to companies like Guardian in particular is that I'm around very smart people who are very like-minded when it comes to that core value. And so as chief legal officer, when you're really driving, a culture of compliance, an ethical culture, and a culture that always does the right thing, it really becomes much easier, to my mind, at a company like Guardian than perhaps a company where the core mission is something different. And I'm not saying that those other companies lack ethics or anything like that. I'm just saying that when I look at, we get up every day to be able to provide products and services to Americans in their time of need and when they're ready to retire with dignity. And that's a purpose that's bigger than all of us.
Yeah, I love that. Now I can see why you're so excited about life insurance. That's a good reason to get up every day and go to work. I want to pause for a minute because something you just said, being the CLO and being part of a company with a culture of high ethics and integrity. And so, for our listeners who are maybe more senior in their work experience and their career journey, who might be thinking about their next step as a CLO and how they evaluate different opportunities that come to them, do you have any advice for someone who is interviewing or thinking about starting the journey into a CLO seat on how they would evaluate that cultural, ethical fit for their aspirations and the kind of leader they want to be and the companies they're talking to?
You learn a lot about a company, especially a publicly traded company, by reading the SEC filings and getting a sense of how the company prioritizes its business objectives and just doing the basic research about a company and getting a sense of the corporate culture. And that's for one. And then also, I think that there is this tone from the top. The CEO holds great sway over a company's corporate culture, and to make sure that the CEO's approach to balancing competing business objectives while at the same time adhering to high ethical standards is consistent with your view as an attorney. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be an advisor to not only the CEO, but also the board and the other business leaders. And so it's important to make sure that the general viewpoint of how to approach ethics compliance issues are similar to your view. I think that that's what I would recommend, and to ask probing questions in that regard. Also, indication would be the role of the incumbent CLO and the incumbent CLO's relationship to the executive management team and
Yeah.
the CEO and the board. That tells you a lot about how the role is valued in the organization.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Kermit, the name of the podcast is Resilient. So I want to turn now to a point in your career that maybe was challenging for you or was a stretch for the things that you hadn't experienced yet and really required you to lean on your resilient muscles. Will you tell us a story of something you got to do or had to do that was demonstrative of resilience, and share with us how you got through it and what your guiding principles were as you navigated that situation?
I think that if there's one kind of broad category that I think speaks to the need for resilience is no one goes through this career or any career without career setbacks and disappointments. And I've had my share. I've always told my colleagues that I am here before you as a result of my failures as well as my successes. And both are equally important in equal measure. The reason why is because with the setbacks came the learning opportunities, not only about myself as far as my ability to withstand setbacks and disappointments, but also how I could learn to navigate around obstacles. And so early in my career, I remember I was going out after I was a third year in law school, and I applied for this job, and I just knew I was going to get this job. And with all the logic of a 25-year-old, I was putting all my eggs in the basket of this job. And I got, I think, one or two rounds in the interviews and didn't get the job. and it was very, very, very disappointing. And I couldn't think beyond other opportunities other than this particular job. And it made me realize that, one, Kermit, you got to start managing things that are totally in your control and recognize the things that are not in your control and to be able to plan accordingly. And so this approach of putting all your eggs in one basket, having the thought system that just because you want something and you feel that you're deserving does not mean you're going to get it. There are a lot of other factors that determine whether or not you'll get what you're seeking, and to be able to be more diversified in what you're looking for. And to create greater optionality in your career. So, fast forward, I think I mentioned to you that I was briefly acting superintendent. I was first deputy superintendent of insurance, the number two. The super that I worked for moved on, and I really wanted to succeed him. And I really went all in to try to become the next superintendent of insurance in New York. And the governor made a different decision and chose someone else. And so that setback taught me, again, reminding me of that setback earlier in my career, that, okay, it's time to pivot. It's time to take the learnings from this experience and pursue other opportunities, but to not personalize the disappointment. I think that one of the learnings I've had is when you have career setbacks is that you don't overly internalize the bad news, that you take it as feedback, not necessarily failure, and then just move forward. So, and that's what I encourage everyone. Any news never feels as good or as bad as it turns out to be after first hearing it. So bad news always feels worse in the moments you hear it, but then things turn out to trend better. And good news never turns out to be as good as it feels when you hear it, because, there's kind of this like reversion to mean after you've heard the good news. So I think that with resilience, that would be my watch out. And that is, don't internalize the setback, always assume positive intent, and take those disappointments as feedback, not necessarily failure.
Yeah, I love that failure is just a form of feedback, right? It's just something that you can know about yourself and do differently if you think you need to. That's great.
Everyone has experienced these types of setbacks.
It is really easy to forget that when you're having a setback, but it is a good thing to remind yourself of.
When I'm looking at Canada, it's easy to succeed if the wind is always at your back. Those who succeed in the face of obstacles that they've had to overcome are the type of leaders that excite me.
How do you identify leaders like that? How do you find those leaders? So when you're thinking about hiring onto your team or putting teams together to maybe tackle a big new challenge, how do you identify or nurture or cultivate leaders like that?
Well, one, by being authentic and genuine and revealing the fact that you've overcome setbacks. You know what I mean? When you look at my career journey, there's been setbacks that I've had to overcome. And I feel as if I'm a stronger leader because of it. So one, just being authentic and vulnerable in that way. And then two, inviting others to share their setbacks and how they've overcome them and celebrate the resiliency.
Is this what you mean by creating a culture of how?
I got to give my mom credit for that. When I was a teenager, I forget exactly what I was doing, but she said, and I don't know where she got it from. She probably got it from some books that she was reading. It was the 70s. She says, it's not you can't, it's how can you? So don't say you can't. Ask yourself, how can you do this? When I'm working with my colleagues, look, it's not we can't, it's how can we? And because when you say you can't, you're done. There's nothing more to discuss or to think about. When you say, how can I? You open up a world of possibilities to get around the obstacle.
Yeah, that is very much aligned with what I hear many CLOs say in terms of how they approach their role as a business leader, as a business partner, as an enabler of innovation for their companies. It's the not dwelling on the can't, but thinking about the how. So I love that.
Yes.
When you think about the skills that are going to be important for chief legal officers or senior legal executives over the next, 5 or 10 years, do you see any particular skills as rising above in terms of their importance for leaders like this?
Yeah, I think technology. I think understanding the intersectionality between technology, when I say that, I mean AI, cybersecurity, and all the legal issues that flow from that and privacy, and the business, the legal and policy issues at that intersection is something that every CLO is going to have to be on top of.
And what makes you optimistic about the future? Or what are you excited about besides life insurance? Do you have any other particular interests that make you excited to come to work in the morning?
There's the business of insurance itself, and there's the people that I work with. And I get a lot of joy working with colleagues to help solve problems. There's a lot of seriousness, but there's a lot of laughing when we're dealing with issues at work. And that's because we're collegial, we're a good team. And so it makes me excited to go to work.
Well, that's wonderful. Kermitt, I have really enjoyed having you as my guest on the podcast. I really appreciate you sharing the influence your dad had, the great advice your mom gave you, and your theories and leadership focus as you've navigated your career. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Kermitt, it's been uplifting to hear how your parents and career challenges and experiences have influenced how you lead and cultivate resilience within your team. I really admire how you've been able to discover your passion for ethics and the insurance industry, and I hope this conversation will inspire others to find and stay true to their own passions. We've covered a lot on today's episode, and if you want to know more about the Chief Legal Officer's role and many perspectives across legal leadership, visit us on Deloitte.com and search Chief Legal Officer. Want to hear from other legal leaders on this podcast? What can we bring you next? Please share your feedback. We really want to hear from you about topics and leaders of interest. Hit me up on LinkedIn to share your ideas, or for more insights from many iconic and resilient leaders, just go to Deloitte.com/US/resilient. Until next time, remain resilient.